helps to keep their take in the drug war or the drug business happening. So you look at who Calderon's gone after. He's gone after the Tijuana cartel and the Gulf cartel. That's where most of the soldiers have gone. Now there's been some in some other areas, but there's this other group in central Mexico, Sinaloa, Juarez. We haven't read a lot about troops going in there or any kind of real effort, which would go along with what this guy's saying, and is that it's selective enforcement to some end that we don't necessarily know what it's about. I don't know if I buy that or not, but I'm just saying that's one theory on it. The other thing, if you got to either decide, is the government at some level complicit, and Calderon's just an idiot, doesn't realize it yet, and he's going to learn the hard way. And I know there are at levels of the government there is corruption, definitely in Mexico. And the other thing, there's corruption in our government, in the U.S. government, with respect to the drug war. So when they send these troops in and try to clamp down on one side, it's like squeezing a balloon. It's going to pop up on the other side. And so if you go after the Gulf cartel at the same time, I'm saying it's really an organization, the narco-trafficking, indigenous narco-trafficking organizations in Nuevo Laredo, which is just south of Laredo, and about, 300, 400, 500 miles down the border is Tijuana, and a little south of there is Sinaloa. Those groups are trying to muscle in on that transportation corridor. And so if you go after one side of that and not the other side, well, what's going to happen, You're going to have a lot of people die. Yeah, I mean, it's like sending troops into Iraq in the middle of a civil war. I mean, not to draw any parallels, but it's not a dissimilar situation.
I understand. Could you tell us also something about how people perceive, the common people across Latin America, how they perceive the top drug dealers, how they mystify them, and what reasons they have for this? Because we hear all the time fears from the governments if these people, former drug dealers, are let to have to run for elections and public offices. They have in many areas quite big chances to be elected by the common people.
Well, that I can't claim to know so much about. I mean, I do know there's a mystique about the narco traffickers. I mean, there's a patron saint of narco traffickers, and I would analyze that more as a class thing, not so much. And it depends. To make a broad statement about it is difficult, but one of the dynamics is, the disparity between rich and poor in Mexico is even greater than it is in the States. But, in the States, we have this mystique about the Old West, right, and outlaws like Jesse James. And we have the mystique about actually another era of prohibition, the Al Capones and the gangsters of that era. And even those the real-life people were incredibly brutal, vicious, people you wouldn't want to meet, right, and deal with. Their mystique and their legends kind of, are something bigger than they are, something different than they are, and it gets a little distorted. So there's a little bit of myth about it, and I think it has to do with this struggle of these. For the most part, the narco traffickers come out of the very poor classes, the lower classes, and they rise to these levels, regardless of what you want to say about their means. But they achieve power, they take on the system, and there's a certain, mystique about that, and there's also the reality that some of this money does come back into the communities, and the people involved in the narco trafficking business, because it is a business, in various ways can make money off it. And if you're dirt poor and your crops aren't growing and all the jobs are gone, but you can make a living doing this, as bad as it is, it's something. So I think that's got to be part of it, and it doesn't surprise me, because we do the same thing. I don't know about Slovenia, but we have these folk heroes that are kind of the anti-folk hero types, and they all have this like Robin Hood mentality, like they rob from the rich, get back to the poor. Even though in most cases it's really not true, but it's something I guess people need to believe in. And that's my quick analysis of that phenomena. I really don't think in dealing with these people or following them that I would ever idolize them in any way. But what I would say is, and it goes back to what I said, there are clear rules. There are clear rules in that world that once you get in it, you can't get out. It's very difficult. But there's clear rules about, you know, what you do and what you don't do, and very little bullshit in between. Excuse the French, if I can say that.
No problem.
Which isn't really the case when you get into the middle class world and the bureaucracies and everything else, where everything's spin and twisted words, and you know, there is no moral compass now. You know, there's a moral compass in the narco trafficking world. It may not be the one you want to live by, but there is one.
There is one, yes.
Yeah.
Which you can't say about the world in which most of us live today.
Well, you know, I don't want to make it sound glamorous. I'm just saying that that could be people like definitive things, right? And in real life, that's very rare. I mean, you go day to day trying to figure out life. That world, what I've discovered is once you're sucked into it, the only way you get out is dead. And that's one of the rules. And the other thing is, you know, you either get power and rise in it, or you get dead. The people on the low end of that system, on one end of that totem pole, have a very low chance between getting killed or ending up in jail. I mean, you know, and the ones that survive that, the Cinti Curio Fuenteses, right, or the Guzmo Chapman, you know, the Chapo Guzman, excuse me. He's a big name now. The ones that survive that, people look at that and say, that must be some kind of brilliant guy to get through that world and be on top of it, you know? And okay, all right, but then I look at what that involves. I mean, there's a trail of blood, and there's a trail of just, you know, the most gruesome things you can think of, you know. I mean, you know, Dracula wouldn't compare to what really happens in that world. So that is kind of the thing, you know. That's just my observation, and I just see people that got sucked into it. And whether it's, you know, people that were within, you know, legitimate or honest people to begin with, or people that had no choice or felt they had no choice, it's a world you that really you can't. I see very few ways that you can get out of once you're in it. So your only choice is to be more ruthless than the next guy, and that goes back to the whole frame of the drug war. I really think the drug war creates that.
That's what I wanted to ask.
Yeah, you know, and a lot of people disagree with me, but you know, I know in most streets, or most cities in this country, anybody that wants to go buy drugs knows exactly where to do it. In other words, there's plenty of drugs out there under this current system of prohibition. They're all over the place, and it's ruining thousands of lives right now. And the prison systems are chock full of people that are testament to that, and so are the graveyards here. So the reason that this drug war continues is that there's a criminality factor to it, which raises the prices of these drugs, because the higher the risk in a capitalist supply and demand system, the more you can command for the product. So you take the profit motive out of the drug trade, you will crush the cartels, the narco trafficking organizations. And that's what I think needs to be done. And you also will completely emaciate the underground financial pipeline that props up this narco trafficking conglomerate that has such its tentacles in various places all over the world. So yeah, I would say legalize the shit and put the money we're spending on prisons into harm reduction and addiction treatment. And, you know, I mean, it doesn't mean that you know, somebody that's an idiot and goes out, gets stoned and gets in a car accident isn't liable. That isn't, I mean, people hear the word legalize, they say, you just want to give drugs out to everyone, want to be stoned all the time. That isn't, I mean, there will be, you know, some trade-offs, but the reality is I don't think there's going to be that many more people that are going to get